Oh, let's see, we got about half a minute to go. Get everything.
The Friends of the Library is meeting in the little room back there.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I think we can just glance around and for roll call, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, let's note that
Yeah, just,
who we are. I'm Pete Walter, staff liaison. You guys may introduce yourself.
okay, I'm Brian Boyce, Chair of the NRC.
Ginger Redlinger, Secretary.
Richard Craven, member.
And Pete Walter, staff liaison. Didn't have
Okay.
my mic on.
So has everyone reviewed the minutes or have any comment on them?
I did not take a look at those. I just posted them. I can't see them
Can
on
you
my screen.
move the
Hmm.
agenda item to adoption of minutes, the active item?
Okay.
Can you
Oh, can
change
you
the
s-
active item to adoption of minutes?
Oh,
'cause it's
sorry.
on the-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Then the document will come up.
Thanks.
Mine came up anyway.
Mine didn't.
Well, it took it a while. Just now got up.
Where is it? I see draft minutes, but it doesn't seem like it wants to.
Yeah, I got
There
to
it
push.
is.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, thank
There
you.
we go.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's,
I think it was fine.
yeah, while we're looking at this, as there's no public presence, we won't have any public comments, just so that's in there.
Yeah, I did not.
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Yep, that's good.
And I did, I see they're mentioning my reports which I did do for both the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So those have been carried out. Basically the same presentation both times, since it's the same us. There's, down near the end,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Craven said the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council had been pursuing a scattering canyon project.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the scattering means.
That's,
Well, that
means,
oh,
go ahead.
that has to do with the Mountain View Cemetery,
Yeah,
and I guess now there's a scattering area down there for ashes and so forth. for the
oh,
remains.
okay, that's the scattering. Okay.
Yeah,
I just-
and there's also a lot of erosion down there in the canyon, so we've been talking about a wetland project basically to form an area down there to, excuse me, to slow the water down and basically pool it more and to provide a little better place, you know.
Yeah, less erosion and,
Yeah,
So should I add that it's in Mountain View Cemetery in the minutes?
yeah,
Does it say
it
that?
says at Mountain View Cemetery
Okay.
already.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
The headwaters.
Yeah, I guess it's probably a better description to say a project in the scattering canyon.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'll look at that and make that
Yeah.
correction.
okay. Is
Or
there-
the vicinity of the scattering canyon.
In the vicinity.
Yeah.
Okay. Can do.
Okay, any more comments on the minutes? Okay, Hearing none, then in the spirit of consensus, I'll consider them adopted.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll make those changes and get them published. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask a question
Okay.
on what is a quorum in terms of this committee?
It's a majority of the sitting members,
Is that
I
the?
believe.
Well, that's what I'm trying to clarify, I guess. Is that in the city ordinances someplace, or how is that defined?
I thought that was in our
That's in
bylaws
our
somewhere.
bylaws, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's
Yeah.
not in our bylaws,
I
it's in the
couldn't-
city code under the NRC section.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so if we're short a member or more, then
Yeah.
the number could vary. It's not a number of potential members, but actual members.
And then, while we're on that topic, we did not get any applicants for the vacant positions and for the termed-out positions. However, sitting members whose time will expire before January, when they start recruiting again, because they recruit all the boards and commissions again January 7th, are welcome to stay on until the interview process is started again, and after that, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
my problem with attending all these meetings is I'm writing a book, and it's a
Oh.
huge time commitment. And I keep feeling like I should be off writing something, or researching something. And, I'm databasing a lot of information and converting that into a book. So,
Okay.
and nowadays you don't just write a book and give it to the publisher like you used to. You have to prove to the publisher that you have a following by setting up, online presences and things like that, and that's going to be something I need to start as well. And
Well, I think we should, we should talk about that in,
it would be possible that I could
For-
stay on, but I don't want to be chair again. So,
well, Doug DeHart mentioned, had some ideas about our next meeting, so, and
Mhm.
what we should be discussing then, too. So when
Yeah.
we get to the staff updates, and we should probably talk about that. Yeah.
okay.
Mm. All right. So,
Is that rule we nominate the person that's not here? Is that the rule we're going to use?
I don't think that's a formal rule, but
Oh.
I've certainly seen it in action.
Yes, we can say, but Jerry, you weren't here, so you get to do everything.
All right.
Okay. See, and that's
So
down to old business.
let's have a lively discussion about what we would like the city commission to consider in the new year
Yeah.
and for their retreat. What I did was I made a paper copy of Dick's
Yeah.
comments from August, so we could go through those. I would like to, I just want to address the first one just briefly.
Okay.
We have a natural resources overlay district code. It is modeled pretty heavily on the old water resources overlay district code. It's not a set of policies for how city government operates. It's a development review code. So if the intent of developing a natural resources code means something different, such as a sustainability guidance document, a set of guidelines for how departments in the city could operate and communicate with each other, that sort of thing, then that's something that the city would need to do anew. And I know that we talked about getting the committee up to speed on what our current codes do say about natural resources. So
Yeah, I think that would be real good.
right now, we're in compliance with Metro Title III and Title 13, which is what we're required to be under the Metro Code. and that is done through our Natural Resource Overlay District Code, which protects wetlands, streams, and riparian habitat areas.
Okay, has the
Yeah.
city, does the city have a clearer idea when they're going to be tackling the next set of code revisions?
Right. No, because that either needs to come from the city commission decision-making process or as mandated by DLCD through the periodic review process. And neither of those things has happened at this point. Typically, the way we update our codes is on an ongoing basis in response to whatever is the issue at the time. So, for example, this year we've adopted several master plans through the legislative process. We've adopted the sewer master plan and the Lynn Avenue corridor plan, and those are a couple of legislative files. Typically, when you're changing your code or you're changing your comprehensive plan in any way, you have to make it a legislative process, which requires a significant amount of public involvement and notification as well. So changing the natural resources code would require the same process, since it affects potentially what people can and can't do with their property, and that triggers public hearings at the planning commission level and the city commission level, as well as notification requirements under state law. But it's doable, provided the city commission says this is something that needs to happen.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I threw this out as an idea based on what someone else said,
Yeah.
and I did not have anything really specific, that I thought was not being covered, but I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something we need to discuss, and
we should, when the time comes for this to be revised, which shouldn't, from what I understand, shouldn't be too much hugely in the future, but fairly relatively soon, we should take a good hard look at it and see
Sure.
if it's up to snuff according to what we understand.
And there's nothing that stops us from evaluating it and just getting familiar with our existing code in the meantime.
Right. Yeah, that's
Right,
true,
right.
because that's where you got to start. No use suggesting things that are already in the code,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of our,
Yeah, so we could say that to the council that when the time comes, we would like to have some input on it, but at this point, we're not ready to say anything specific, because we don't, we haven't studied the law yet, and that's what we need to do. So getting that on our agenda would be maybe the first step.
Yep. And I know from conversations with the Department of Geology and Minerals, Dogami, that there's some rulemaking or requirements in the near future for certain cities who may not have geologic hazard overlay code up to snuff. Oregon City, I don't believe, is one of those cities. We have a very, I feel, progressive geologic hazard overlay review process right now. So there may be minimal requirements coming out of the state mandate for that in the future, but it's going to be relying heavily on the latest technology from Dogami, which we already use. The LiDAR data, the HazView, or all these other things. Certain cities in the metro region aren't that way. So I know for a fact that that's going to be coming down the pike probably mid to late next year from the state.
Yeah, I've stared at the HazView fault maps and various layers that they have, and it's interesting because there's faults, but there's no real description of how active they are or
how old they are,
how dangerous they are. And,
right.
But, there's like one of them runs right through Park Place School, and a bigger one runs through the grounds of Oregon City High School, and so on and so forth. So the potential is there, but what does that mean? And Dogami is the one that should be, informing us on that, and I'm not sure if they're ready to. Yeah. Because there's an awful lot of faults out there.
Yeah, and when DLCD wants to be sure that when they say city or county make it so, that it's relying on the best possible information, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
yeah.
justified by accepted information,
Mhm.
so.
But that does influence us, because there's a role for the NRC in that.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
you know, some of the geologic hazards probably may not be directly associated with faults, just like some of the unstable soils in Newell Canyon. Those are going to move whether there's a fault there or not, I think.
Right.
And that's something we know now since they've lost some apartments and so on. But
Yeah.
Regarding these items, did anyone else on the committee submit anything to consider, or?
I don't think so, other
No,
than what you've already
this
discussed.
actually covered it fairly well, I thought, as far as the major points.
I don't know if you heard back. I know Doug had some comments, but I don't think he ever put anything down in writing, so, at the last meeting. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything from Shaw about the night lighting ordinance. But our current night lighting ordinance, sorry, is in our site plan and design review code, which applies to commercial and multifamily development sites. And it's, you know, it's kind of a static code, you know. It didn't, for example, doesn't include any LED technology in it, because LED technology wasn't around when we adopted the code. So all of the very high efficiency, full cutoff type fixtures that are now par for the course because they're cheap and efficient were not anticipated when our code was adopted.
Right, right.
And
You can't-
so we kind of have these ongoing policy, well, you know, clearly if it's an LED, it would be meeting the intent of the code, even if it's not mentioned in the code. So those are the kinds of things that we would want to look at. And with respect to shining lights into natural resource areas or anywhere else that really needs to have a protection for dark skies, which I feel is where Shaw really wanted us to focus our attention.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's something that is not in the ordinance. It doesn't say there are specific parts of Oregon City which need to be protected from light and glare in terms of being natural resource areas, except within the natural resource area code where it says you can't shine lights directly into it. So you're technically not allowed to shine any lights into an area that's designated as a natural resource overlay.
Were you able to talk to Shaw at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. I think, you know, the goal was to pick one or two or none, or come up with others that we might forward on to the powers that be, I guess, for further
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah.
And I, where do you want to go, Mr. Chairman, with this?
Well, I have the feeling that the two volunteerism and natural resource positions are a good suggestion to make a big change in what's going on. The night lighting ordinance, it's time for that to be expanded, if now is the time to do that. And as far as the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, that's, I think some more talking needs to be done before that's brought forward. But it's definitely a good idea. And the Natural Resource Code, timing is the big thing here, you know, to start reviewing it so that we can make intelligent suggestions when the time comes, which, like I say, it might be a year, it might be 6 months, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and what else is on here? And
I think I would tend to agree that 3 and 4, both or one or neither, I guess we could recommend.
yeah, and there's
But I think that on number 3, establish a natural resources job position for the city. You know, we're looking at this from our point of view, and maybe we should have had someone in from the city to discuss this in more detail. Like, is somebody really needed? And I happen to believe that someone is needed. That position is needed, but maybe Martin Montalvo is covering that for the most part. I'm not sure exactly.
Well, as with a lot of organizations, you've got people on our staff that wear several hats.
Yeah.
Martin being a classic example, someone who manages the natural resource side of his job as well as the operations side of the
Yeah.
public works. So being responsible for all of those things that he talked to us about, the natural resource areas as well as all the ponds and landscaping and things that the city's responsible for stormwater compliance and all the other reasons. You've got the parks guys maintaining their portions of the parks that are either groomed, landscaped, or managed in a informal way for natural resource values. And I know we've talked as a group about the need to differentiate between those maintenance techniques. I know Jerry in particular is very concerned that we not apply one landscaping technique to all parks, especially where natural resources are concerned. So that's an ongoing discussion we need to have.
And what was the new Parks Operation Manager's name again?
John Waverly.
John
Yeah.
Waverly.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was sensitive to that.
Yeah, he seemed to be more willing to work with volunteers, and that's a good thing. One possibility that I would throw out is that there might be a combined position where someone with natural resource skills could also help develop volunteerism in the city. And that might be a good
Yep.
way of putting it forward. Since the city is less likely to fund two positions than one,
Yeah.
given budget restraints,
Yeah.
that might be a way of getting started.
I think that's
I would
important.
suggest if someone like that was sought after, that they not only did 3 and 4, but they also did 5. That they did an oversight and coordination of the work of the committees. So
Yeah.
they could tackle all 3 of those and integrate that work.
Yep. Yeah, I think that I think their involvement is we have Christina, who is a planner who works with the HRB and is also fairly savvy when it comes to natural resources. She actually helped write portions of our natural resource overlay district code. But I definitely agree with you about having someone who knows how to coordinate between those committees.
Yeah, this.
Well, did I hear a motion to do something?
We haven't made. We've been discussing the possibility of a
3, 4,
motion.
and 5.
And,
I like the idea.
fortunately, we have a quorum that includes someone to make a second and and so on. And the chair is supposed to encourage the members to do
Now,
that.
if you make that motion, who rewrites this?
I would be willing to work on it. If anyone else wants to join in, then fine.
Okay.
You want to just pass it around to people?
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. When is it due?
Well, I know we talked about getting this before the city commission well in advance of a retreat.
Yeah,
So-
so it would be
Yeah,
something
very
that
s-
needs to be done in the next week
couple
or
weeks.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. Next week or two.
Maybe
Yeah.
we could say it's either new, or they could revise a current position,
Yeah, that's
because there seems to be a lot of local talent able
yeah. That
that's
it's
working for the city now. If they
Yeah.
restructured their
Yeah.
work, they might be able to
yeah.
to do
I'd
this.
I'd like to see it be a new position, which they would have to sign on to that idea and that funding, because if you it would be possible for someone already present in the city to take that on, but then then they're going to have to hire for their previous job, because you can only get so much done, that's for sure. But I think that encouraging the city to look into committing the funds to a position like this would be is what we need to do, because that's what it comes down to is funds.
Right, but basically, the city would need to look at the present structure and responsibilities of each of those folks in the structure to determine how things might be moved around or reorganized, basically.
Yeah.
And then determine whether or not, a new position is needed for that. And so, I'm not exactly sure. Were we supposed to take this to the city commission, or? I thought this was a
This
submittal
is kind of
to
like
staff.
Well, yeah, it goes to
Yeah.
Tony and then to David Frazier.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then to the council for the
And then
retreat.
to the retreat.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yep.
yeah. So,
Um,
so do I,
So, yeah, I think, potentially what you've already kind of said in here is that this person working between departments and among departments, which has budget ramifications for more than one department budget, which may be the best way to spread the cost burden of that position. But not being in charge of any budget myself, I can't really
Yeah.
speak to that.
well, that's really what the whole point is,
Yeah, sure.
It's one thing to agree that they need this position, but it's another thing to agree that they're going to finance it.
Right.
But I think it needs to be brought forward so that at least they start thinking on it and see what they think. And we have basically 3 out of 5 of the commission will be new members, and some of them have run in the past, been on the commission in the past, but they're new faces will be sitting up here.
True.
So, and I haven't had a chance to communicate with any of the new people to see what their attitudes are and so on.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, it does, we need to start by putting this forward, I believe.
So basically, what's the time frame again?
Well, let's see, I'm not going to planning commission, we're going to city commission, but I would say we need to have this before the city commission before early December, so that's going to be second.
Why would this go to the city commission?
Because they're the ones that make the budget decisions.
Well, yeah, but
Well,
that's not going to be made there. This is
No,
for the
but-
retreat in January.
I'm not sure when the retreat schedule is, but
Yeah.
no, you're right, Dick. I don't
That's-
think it's going to be like a decision item on a city
No.
commission.
No,
meeting.
but
Yeah,
it's goal setting is more than anything.
yeah.
And if they decide that this is a worthy goal, then they'll go for it, and-
Right, but they don't do that at the commission meeting, though.
No, they
Aren't they just gathering ideas?
Yeah, they're really just gathering
And then-
ideas at the retreat, and
Yeah.
it has an agenda, and
Yeah.
it's usually a big, long agenda.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of the kitchen sink.
But isn't the
yeah,
agenda
it's
determined
January.
by
Yeah.
what ideas have been put forth?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Now, ideally, well, you've already spoken to the city commission, and I didn't know if they didn't have a lot of questions at that time, but, I feel like putting it on the city commission agenda in the form of just a public comment or something like that may give them a heads up that this is coming down the pike for the retreat, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and
Early and often.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we.
I'm not sure we need to revise this document, what's crafted here, other than maybe putting a sentence about our suggestions for how they can use this information. For example, hire a new position or rework current to figure out, fitting it in with the other changing needs of the city. Figuring out how these 3 goals could be staffed, and then hiring a new position for whatever work is new that's not related to this. I mean, it could be
If it would be helpful, I could just write my comments in the margin and send it to you via email, so,
Yeah, and then
because
we
I
could
like this
comment on it.
document, these goals are good.
Yeah, yeah, the basic ideas are quite good.
Yeah.
Of course they are. I'm sorry, Mr.
Bias,
Chairman.
bias, the author's bias.
Wonder who wrote these? Oh, it says at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Well, you're excused this time,
Yeah.
you
Can we
know.
take that name off of there?
Yeah, you know, on number 4, for example, the volunteer position, now, Bob Roth was talking about that, remember?
Yes,
And so that's, picked up from Bob.
yeah, and,
So I don't claim,
yeah, it's, and it's something I've had in my mind as well, it's something that the city could be doing a lot more, and some other park departments in the region are doing a lot more. And, but it has to do with the attitudes of the people that are going to be using the volunteers too. But having someone that's part of their job could really bring about some results. Because
Right.
there was a lot of parks maintenance that had been long deferred that some volunteer group helped take care of this year. And
And volunteer coordinating is a huge job. It can quickly dissipate if you have a lot of people.
yeah, and
So-
you need to keep the people supplied with what they need and have the task lined up and so on. And that'll be partially, say if they do some project in a park, then the parks people need to be lining up what they need to do and what equipment they need and all that, as well as a coordinator being a central point, I would think, where volunteers can go to find out what's available and so on. And the city does have a lot of volunteers now, especially on the boards and committees and whatnot, like us. But this is something else where we're talking about helping out in natural resource areas and parks in general as well.
I'd like to talk about number 7 on the back, just for a
Okay.
second. And I don't think this would get very far within the city, but the Greater Oregon City Watershed Committee encompasses basically all of Oregon City, the urban growth boundary, and so forth and so on. And it seems to me that somehow, and maybe this is what the Greater Oregon City Watershed Committee needs to do with others, but it seems to me that there could be some kind of a combined group of folks, organizations, whatever, to bring that more to a focused entity within the city, within the urban growth boundary. And frankly, it just seems to me Clackamas Community College with the Environmental Learning Center is a perfect situation for that. But I'm not sure how that could be brought together. You would have to be talking to the foundation folks and the college folks plus others to try to make something like that happen, I think.
Yeah.
But with the improvements that are going to occur up there, maybe something like this could fall out of that. But it would take a lot of folks talking to, whoever's in charge of the Environmental Learning Center and the new improvements that are going to occur up there to make it happen.
Yeah.
And maybe they have something like that in mind. I'm not really sure.
I did attend one of their meetings for the Environmental Learning Center, and
Yeah.
they were talking more about what they're going to do with the Environmental Learning Center rather than expanding out. But probably nobody's really broached that idea to them. I believe back when Jerry Herman was running it, there was a certain amount of that being done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that all dissipated after he left.
So the current level of funding is where's that money coming from? Is it Oregon?
Basically, it's grants. Rita
Oh,
Baker
well.
is the manager.
Yeah, isn't she like 5 hours a week or
Yeah,
something?
like 4 or 5, and I know she spends a lot more time than that.
Yep.
But she's funded for like 4 or 5 hours and a week, and that money comes from grants, administrative fees from grants.
Yeah, and
And she does a lot of work. And, little more funding, if she wanted to be a little more active, a lot more things could be happening, I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah, there's, it's a perpetual problem with especially the smaller watershed
Yeah.
councils is lack of
Yeah.
adequate funding, and it gets depressing for some of them because, there's so much to do and so little to do it with, and only a few of them have really gotten rolling, shall we say, with more than adequate funds or adequate funds even.
Well, anyway, just keep it in mind. And,
Yeah, I think they need to be supported in some way, and exactly how, I haven't really thought that through,
Well,
but
you see, it's not exactly the Greater Oregon City Watershed Committee necessarily that has to be supported. It's maybe, somebody putting together an organization that includes Greater Oregon City Watershed Committee, the college, and other entities.
yeah,
you know.
there's,
And
yeah,
it seems like there's a lot of energy that could be created from doing something like that, especially with the college.
yeah, the college might be able to assist in some way, and,
Yeah.
especially that environmental learning center, as you say. But, the constant pursuit of grants is par for the course for watershed councils.
Yeah.
But in terms of the city's contribution to that, is this goal actually asking for just funding to increase the level of match, or what are we asking for from the city?
I,
I was leaving it unspecific, I guess, because
Okay.
I didn't know, maybe the city would support $2,000 or $5,000. I was looking at a bunch of organizations. All of a sudden, if several organizations are supporting, physically supporting things for a couple thousand, a few $1,000s each,
Right.
there's quite a bit of money there that would allow a lot more activity. And so it's just, didn't have a figure in mind.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, a worthy topic.
yeah,
for
so
consideration.
it's something to develop further,
Yeah.
to get an idea of, how the, I believe the Oregon City Watershed Council has been required to sort of team up with some other watershed councils, smaller ones. And OWEB is going to give a block grant to that group of watershed councils, and that's going to complicate matters as well.
Okay.
They can submit separate grant requests to, but they have to send one into OWEB and divide the money up. I'm not sure how that's being handled even, Clackamas River Basin Council was large enough that it wasn't forced to combine with other groups, but most of them were. And this is something that's still being implemented as we speak. And
Right.
this granting cycle will be done with those groupings. And I know the Oregon City Watershed Council wasn't real fond of the idea, but that's what OWEB is
Yeah.
insisting on. So that complicates things a little bit, at least. They still need financing assistance, though, because 5 hours a week is not enough to really roll as strong as you would like to.
Yeah. And, they encompass the urban growth boundary.
Right.
Are there any other groups around that do that?
Not really.
Like within this is,
Portland's divided up into a
Yeah.
number of watersheds,
Yeah.
and there's Sandy and Johnson Creek, and there's a little one similar to the Oregon City one, but it goes north from the Clackamas
Yeah.
for a ways. All the small creeks that go into the Willamette, and and then there's I think there's a big one for the Tualatin River,
yeah, but you've
and
got
so on and so forth.
Oregon City, the college, and all these other entities, and you got the Greater Oregon City Watershed Committee that's supposed to be taking a look at everything within the urban growth boundary. And it just seems to me there needs to be more input
Yeah,
from various entities.
I know that they could, if they had more financing, they could take projects on quicker. They're sort of,
Yeah.
we can do this much phase right now, and it's like the Waterboard Park. They decided to put that off. It was too much to bite off at once, along with the other stuff they were already thinking of. And it'll probably be done next year.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
so do we have a plan, or?
well, what we need is an actual motion to go ahead and forward the position idea. And,
Well, I thought that Pete was going to get back to us.
yeah,
right?
okay.
Well, yeah.
Do we
I mean,
want a formal motion, or, we're obviously in agreement.
If you're all in agreement that this is pretty much complete, then I think
Yeah,
kind of,
I think,
I'm worried
Well-
about 6, though.
you worried
We
about
don't
6?
have info in 6. All it
6, yeah,
says
I'm a little
is,
worried about that, too.
Shaw, can you provide a rationale? I don't think we can afford that.
no.
Oh, I
but
thought we were talking about 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so are we just going to stop
I
at
would,
5,
I would,
since 7 is up?
I would still like to get Shaw to provide that, and I think we can do that on the 2-week deadline.
Yeah, and if I could add some direction there, I know that there's the International Dark Sky Code.
Yeah.
There's plenty
Oh,
of, there's
great.
plenty of model
Okay.
codes out there.
Okay.
Do they fit Oregon City?
Yeah, I
I
believe
think
that's the one that Shaw is basing everything on.
Okay.
Right, I'm pretty familiar with that code.
Mhm.
I think what's beneficial for Oregon City is that, we identify what is important in terms of where are the natural resource areas that you can just basically list in your ordinance
Mhm.
that are sensitive areas that really need to be protected from glare, light pollution, et cetera. Having done that, then you need to discuss, are you really going to apply the ordinance throughout the urban growth boundary on an enforcement basis, or are you going to do it some other way? Because then you're really talking, we've got so much residential land here.
Mhm.
It's fairly easy to check these things for commercial properties. It's not so easy to keep a focus on residential subdivisions, because owners go out and they buy a set of lights, and, you never know, it's going to be a problem. They're primarily concerned about security. But, so there's an enforcement aspect to instituting a dark sky code that has real teeth. So that's something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
But I do think that where the dark sky code and your natural resources code match up, there's room for some good
Yeah.
review there.
Yeah, I've been thinking along the lines of an element of public education, that would go along, and not so much, especially in the residential, not so much on the enforcement side on older property. New properties, it could certainly encourage that from the get-go, and along with public education, so that people keep it that way as far as possible.
That is a really good one, yeah. I agree, because this is the sort of thing where you can put a flyer in a utility bill and say, look, hey, are your lights dark sky compliant? And if not, think about changing them out when they
Yeah.
burn out,
Yeah, and
because then you don't have a cost crunch associated with it. You're going to be replacing it anyway.
yeah, and if you combine that with LED technology, you can start talking about energy savings, and
Yeah, no, I agree, Brian. That's a really good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
and make it to their advantage, not just that you didn't light up the park next door.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's definitely people out there that are afraid of whoever's out there, and want to light it up. And so that's part of
Yeah.
the problem.
It's really getting people to understand the difference between lighting quantity and lighting quality, or
Yeah.
and what that means.
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
So basically, you're going to get something back to us? Is that,
Well, I can provide a rationale if you guys are still on board with this.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at it, see if we,
Yeah.
how we want to,
My
if we
feeling
want to
here,
rewrite or not, and so on.
Yeah.
well, we have 2 members missing, and
Right.
it seems to me something needs to be summarized. I think that's what I heard you talking about for 3, 4, 5, and 6.
3, 4,
Well,
5, and
6 would be separate, I think.
6 sounds like a separate one because it's really
Yeah.
pretty specific.
Yeah.
The
and,
other 3 are having to
Okay.
do with staffing and budgets.
Okay.
3, 4, and 5, anyway. Was there anything else on this that you guys were thinking about beyond these 7?
I really don't. I think that I've really been thinking strongly towards the volunteerism and, some sort of stronger position within the city supporting natural resources. And so it's, and the night sky should be brought forward, and it may not be the moment to adopt it, but at least start considering it, move it towards part of the city code when the time comes to add that in.
Okay. All right, well, I'll try to get you guys something by the end of Friday, but I might have to get it to you on Monday
Okay?
with the weather. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, do we have any member reports? Well, I've pretty much given mine already. And,
I know Doug wanted us to discuss, at the next meeting anyway, the election of officers and the
oh, yeah.
possibility of doing more outreach to advertise the open positions that we have. So that's important.
Yeah, that definitely needs to happen.
If you are aware of anybody who might be interested in positions on the NRC, please send them my way.
Okay?
And I'll be happy to
Our,
return.
excuse me,
Go
are
ahead.
positions advertised through the neighborhood associations?
Well, insofar as, yeah, I mean, we have a listserv for all neighborhood associations, and it goes through them, but I mean, if that's as far as it goes, I don't know if there are any other mechanisms other than, actually going to neighborhood association meetings and doing active recruiting and that sort of thing. I don't think that happens. There's definitely a role there for somebody. But staff generally doesn't do that. The reason that they coordinated this process into one time period or 2 time periods every year is because of the time it takes to go through the interview process and the appointments and the scheduling for that. All that's done by the mayor. So it's a busy time to be mayor.
I
Well,
have a
yeah.
suggestion.
Yeah.
What I call the friends groups.
Mhm.
Maybe if we could, on their webpage, ask them to post, if you are an Oregon City resident and are interested in, like the Tualatin River Keepers, the
Yeah.
Friends of the Trees, the Friends of the Columbia River Gorge. I mean, all the NRC type groups that have constituencies that might live here that may want to participate.
Yeah.
And so if we ask the webmasters of those sites to, where we can post this on their page or send out an email or part of their newsletter or something,
Yeah, well,
that would be nice.
Yeah, like the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council and
Right.
Okay. Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Get the
Okay.
words out.
so exactly how would that happen then? I'm not sure.
You guys
Mm-hmm.
talk to the
Oh,
people
I
that
see what
you
you're
know.
saying. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a member of the Friends of the Columbia River Gorge, too, so I can post there.
Yeah, you never know who's a member of what, you
Yeah,
know.
so
That's a
whatever-
fair-sized organization.
Yeah.
So,
So if you're a member of any of those groups, you would be the natural person
well,
for.
the Clackamas River Basin Council would
Mhm.
probably be glad to put it up.
Mhm.
The way that it's done now, it does go through the press outreach process, so
Mhm.
it'll go to the Tribune and then Clackamas River, Clackamas
Review.
Review,
Mhm.
as well. I believe they do go to the Oregonian as well. So, but the website has an ongoing, this NRC website has our application on it, so.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other member reports?
Well, as part of my development of this book, I'm supposed to collect emails of people that might be interested in hearing about it over time.
What is the book?
Well, it's going to be on an ecological approach to ornamental plants,
Oh.
and it's going to cover plants and quite a few plants in detail. Plus, have the system I created to categorize them from that standpoint. You start doing statistics that come out quite nicely. There's basically 6 categories, and the leaf size of the plants increases in each category from the one before. And certain foliage colors and even the color of new growth falls in specific categories.
Who's the audience of the
good.
book?
That hasn't been entirely decided, but it would be everyone from interested gardeners to professionals. So it's a fairly wide, I think that the usability, especially since there'll be a database that people will be able to buy separate from the book, there'll be a pretty wide audience. And when I go to the publisher, which won't be a long time from now, I'm going to actually lean on them to help describe that audience, and I'll tailor the writing a little, at least somewhat, But, if you make it too simple, then you lose the higher end audience. And you make it too complex, you lose the homeowners, which are a big audience, So getting it, tuned to that whatever level is most appropriate is going to be interesting.
Write the technical one first, and then write the environmental or ornamental plants for dummies. See that? Just
Well, that's a possibility. People love those books for some reason.
They're great.
Yeah,
You can get on one of those.
They're great.
yeah,
That may be a bigger seller than your others. See?
yeah. Well, they say that you make your money off databases and your web presence more than the book now. But the books are too big and expensive, especially if you want to have a lot of pictures. The web is just so much more effective at getting pictures out there. Then, of course, everybody steals them. So anyway, if people are interested in that, I can add you to my budding list, which I haven't really started yet, but I need to start asking.
Send them my way.
Okay.
Have you considered teaching a community class?
Yeah, actually, I tried to do that and didn't get. I didn't promote the idea of the book, though. It was just a general
just
horticultural.
Yeah.
But I just didn't. I've done that in the past, and there was plenty of takers. But this time around, in Oregon City, nothing happened. Very few people. Not enough to run the class. So. Okay. Anybody else?
Well, me too. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be, it won't be overwhelming amount of stuff. You don't do that, but an occasional note how things are proceeding and different aspects of it and so on. Okay.
So, okay. Let's see. Blue Heron update. So the master plan was adopted. Yay! I can't emphasize what a process that was, and I thank everybody who was participating in that. Christina Robertson Gardner let me know today that their next step is developing an RFP for the Riverwalk component, which is, the public access component, as well as the elements of the restoration component of the site, since the Riverwalk will be right up at the edge of the site. And so any habitat considerations and restoration considerations will be coming out of the design process for the Riverwalk. So once they've got a consultant selected, they'll be putting together a process for the design of that, and the Natural Resources Committee will be integral to that process. So they're going to be wanting your input on that. But we're a little ways off yet from developing that. I think the timeline is into the spring for getting a consultant on board for that design. Our Tree City USA submittal deadline for the third year is coming up
Excuse me. Excuse me.
early December. So I will be listing all NRC members as our de facto tree board, as I have in previous applications. And if anybody contacts you from the Arbor Day Foundation, you can say, yes,
Yes,
I am.
Pete Boot.
Exactly. I don't know if they do or not, but if they do, okay. And what else? Oh, yeah. Finally, we will be sending the Heritage Tree Code updates to the Planning Commission for review in December. And I believe the first meeting of the Planning Commission, actually, I don't know that we'll go to the Planning Commission. We may be going straight to the City Commission with this, but this Planning Commission meeting is the second, fourth, first, and third. Yeah, okay, the 8th of December. So, and then I would expect that it may take more than one hearing to get that through, and it's not like a zoning review. It's not a part of the zoning code. It's it's a standalone chapter in the city code, so it does require a public hearing, but it doesn't require all these exhaustive notice requirements that you're required to do whenever you do anything in the zoning chapter of the code.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be going forward finally. And I think that's everything I have. I don't have any natural resource overlay district applications to report at this time. But we are expecting a submittal for a pre-application conference from Union Pacific, where the bridge for the Union Pacific Railroad crosses Abernathy Creek is going to need to be replaced. So that requires a natural resource overlay district application by the city, even though it's a replacement, because the footprint of that replacement is possibly going to change.
Isn't
Yeah.
Abernathy underground at that point?
Well, I'm thinking of the trestle that goes
Trestle.
over just above the big pipe, where it goes out to the river.
Yeah.
That's the section that we're talking about. It's at grade. Well,
Yeah.
not at grade, but crossing over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been talking preliminarily with the Public Works Department about it, but now it's time for them to actually go through the land use process. Mhm. So that'll be something you want to be involved in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Yep, that's all I have.
Okay.
Another question on
Questions?
Blue Heron, back to Blue Heron for a second.
Yeah,
What is the build-out time for that estimated to be?
if I knew that.
Yeah, is there any guesstimate at all? Is it 10 years, 20, or 5, or?
Any of the above, I think.
Yeah, I think Brian's right.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what portions of the site will be most attractive to a developer in the
Yeah.
short term or in the long term.
I did attend
Yeah.
a talk by the developer, and he sounds like he wants to move ahead relatively quickly, but that's, in a big development like that, that could still be years.
Mm-hmm.
And, it depends on him getting financing and, but he likes what he sees as far as the city planning process. He wasn't objecting to that at all.
Right.
And I gave him my idea of,
Yeah.
an art for foundry, statuary foundry, and he said, that's just the sort of idea we need. And
Cool.
he has connections in the art community.
All right.
So it might come to pass.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, the way it would work, Dick, with actual land use applications now is they come in as detailed development plans or site plans. And I believe a lot of those still have to go up to the planning commission level. It's not a staff level decision.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's already in our code, I don't think there's a lot of these. It's not as if now planning commission and city commission is done. Everything's type 2 from this point forward. There's going to be some discretion involved in the review of the subsequent site plans that have to be done to get specific developments online, and that can take a couple of years in the planning stages. It'd be nice to know, but I don't think we
Yeah,
can.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of imponderables,
Yeah, well, I think a year or so ago, I heard somebody say 15 years. Is that?
I wouldn't want to be nailed down to
Yeah.
that. Our master plans typically go the full 20 years. That's permitted in the code before you have to revise the master
Okay.
plan, because you haven't built all of the various stages that you anticipated in it. Sometimes they go longer.
Yeah, I would just
And
like
it's
to
a
be
less
around.
for less complex
Go
sites than
out.
this. I agree. So would I. Well, and we might see the the portions of the project that are not necessarily dependent on private funding, such as the Riverwalk.
Yeah,
That's the one where you can really get people out to the site, get them to see what great potential, and then you have that impetus now to develop something behind it
yeah.
where people want to be. So I think to a certain extent we can control the timing of the Riverwalk construction and get that part of it done.
It'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would be surprised to see a lot happen other than planning before 5 years, but you
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
He might get lucky with his financing and get solid, good financing right at the get-go, and then things would go amazingly fast.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Yeah. That's true.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and we can all run off and do what else we were doing.